Hi Daniel, my name is Andrew, or Andy if you prefer. Yeah. I haven't even started yet and I'm already stumbling over my own words. Again. I'm Andrew, and I found your question rather interesting and also very challenging, so this is me trying to come up with an answer. A few things first though. I'm not a Christian. In fact, I am an atheist. I do, however, occasionally revisit the Christian paradigm, well, mostly just for the fun of it, or simply because, well, when I feel pugnacious, I also do that. But right at the moment, I just thought, hey, that's a religious question. Why not do it? Another few, and I think very important things about me. I've been molested myself. In comparison to what you went through, of course, I don't know what you went through, but the way you talk about it and what it has done to you, compared to that, my molestation was very, very light. It also happened in my late 20s, so when I faced it, I was effectively full-grown adult. Was no longer in my teens, which is always, yeah, it's a very difficult time. The hormones change, the whole psyche changed, the consciousness changes. So I didn't have that problem. I wasn't very vulnerable, at least not from the perspective of my developmental stage, if that makes sense. I also have one disorder. It is bipolar 2, in case that's interesting, which means that I switch rapidly between highly depressive and so-called hypomanic states, which is a state that's just not real mania, but definitely it's a state in which you're way happier and than you are usually if you are a normal person. So whatever I'm about to say, this is coming from someone who I think has a good idea of what you're going through. Of course, I cannot say about myself that I know what you feel and that I know where you stand or that I know what you are, because I haven't had your experience. But I think I have a good enough idea to be authentic in what I'm saying and what I'm telling you. So then let's, without further ado, examine the question. First of all, we can ask ourselves, well, did God want this to happen to you? Or I could ask myself, no, let's maybe start from my position, but perhaps that's more authentic. Did God want me to experience bipolar 2? Did he want me to go through suicidal tendencies, extremely low self-esteem, major depressions, extreme self-criticism? And yeah, I've been there too. That sucks balls, man. Did he want that? Well, I don't know. As far as I was taught, I was brought up Roman Catholic, as far as I was taught, God wants people to have free will. So even if he doesn't inflict harm upon us, even if he doesn't want us to be harmed, he still has to allow other people to harm us, because if he doesn't, there would be no free will, right? I know that to many people that is a cop-out, but let's for the moment adopt the Christian paradigm. Let's assume that there really is a God and that he wants us to have free will. Well, then he has to allow other people to do harm to us, right? He has to allow the person that molested you to molest you. I know. This in itself is enough reason to level lots of criticism at God if you want to. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is, God damn it, my enunciation sucks. Is if we have free will, then, well, bad things will happen to us, because we're not living in a perfect world, and we are all free to do harm to others, to do evil, to become evil, so we can avoid it. So the question, why did God allow this, can be answered that way. I know this isn't the one perfect answer, and I know most people think that this is a total cop-out, but let's just bear with me for a moment, all right? That still, why did he allow it to happen to you? From what you've told and what you've said in your video, this has really, how do you say, done a job on you, taken a number on you, something like that. I just don't know the right idiom at the moment. Sorry, I'm a German. English is not my first language. Well, it has harmed you. Definitely has, and drastically so. Drastically so. Well, that's the way things are at the moment, right? God didn't do it. A person did it, right? So if we truly want to see whether or not this fits with Jeremiah 29:11, we have to see the broader scope. I guess that kind of, how do you say, benefit of the doubt is something we have to give God, that if we assume that he exists, which for the moment we do. We adopted the Christian paradigm. Furthermore, this one verse speaks about prosperity, hope, and future. Let's assume for the moment that through one development or another, you end up as a highly prosperous, very hopeful person which has a bright outlook on life and a bright future ahead of him. Let's assume for the moment that this happens. Well, would this fit with Jeremiah 29:11? If you somehow manage to go through all that pain, all that harm, all that hatred, and through this would end up being a very prosperous, very hopeful, very future-oriented person, or a person with a bright future ahead of him, would this fit with Jeremiah 29:11? I think it would. I think it would. So now the question is, how in the world is this kind of situation, this kind of harm, this evil supposed to turn into something good? At least that's what I felt when I was going through a very, very rough time at the end of my teens. I think I was 19. I was extremely suicidal, extremely depressed, and just like you, I hated the world. I hated everybody. I hated these people who didn't understand me. Back then, this was what I was asking myself. How the hell am I supposed to make something good out of that? Because people were always telling me, my psychologist was telling me, you can't transform this into something good, or you can at least get some good things out of that. And I was like, yeah, right, you're fucking kidding me, huh? Nobody understands me, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And this is a difficult time. But now, I'm 31 now, so effectively 12 years later, I look back and I find that this indeed can happen. Now, I don't have the same disorder as you, and I don't have been molested. I haven't been molested in the way you have, so I don't know what will happen with you, to you, or how your process of recovery therapy will go. I don't know where you will end up. At the moment, I can only tell you from my personal experience and the way of therapy that I have had to go through and that I've gone through. Something I think most psychologists do, or perhaps they don't, is to force the patient to re-examine all of his thoughts, all of his worldviews, all of his opinions, and also the very basic, elemental assumptions he makes about the world. Something like that's ingrained in our psyche and has the power of a dogma without being actually religious. You know, certain things that you just take for granted, just take as truth without ever truly examining them. Every human has these kinds of assumptions. In science we call them axioms. They just naturally pop up. I mean, who is aware of every little thought process within his or her brain, right? Nobody is. So it just will happen sooner or later that an opinion or a maybe almost proven fact is accepted as a fact and then turns into, well, a fundamental truth or a principle that you take up as part of your being, part of your existence, worldview, thoughts, emotions, whatever. And I've had to re-examine them, and that is a rather difficult process. I think you have maybe gone through similar things. I mean, you talked about having to reflect upon your hatred, talk about your hatred, your anger, etc., etc. That's basically what I'm talking about. It's just that you can go even deeper. You can go to a deeper level of your psyche, because what you're talking about mainly seems like symptoms of the disorder you have, or direct results of the disorder. You can go even deeper and go to, well, the beginning of the disorder, or how to put this. The part in your psyche where something suddenly goes wrong. And I had to go there, and this was a very long and often frustrating and also painful process, because let's face it, who of us truly wants to challenge our most basic, most elemental beliefs? Just the few things that we have taken up at one point or another, basically saying, let this be mine, let this be the foundation for my existence. If you have to re-examine that, if you have to reflect upon that, there's always the danger that you end up being wrong, that you find out, oh gosh, this is not truth. This is just one of many possibilities. This thing that I have based my existence on, my worldview, my faith, religion perhaps, this is not as 100% right as I thought it was. This makes a person feel extremely vulnerable, yeah, and it causes a lot of pain, so that's difficult to do. And that's the reason why most people don't do it. But people like you and me who have something in there and nobody exactly knows where, we have to dig for that. We have to explore our own minds. We have to wander through them, wondering sometimes every minute of every day, what's going on here? What's this thought? Where does this come from? And we have to challenge the assumptions or mechanisms of our brains, because these mechanisms are the reason for the disorder. The disorder is somehow part of this mechanism, and we have to find out where exactly our neurons go wrong, so to speak. So we have to go there. We have to do something that nobody else would, or very, very few people would do willingly. We have a basic need to do it if we want to, well, survive and be happy again. I don't know if you've ever been suicidal or truly suicidal, but I have, and this was really necessary for me to survive. If I hadn't gone through this exploration, this reflection, I would literally no longer be here. So I have the strongest of all motivations to do it, which sets people like you and me apart from the rest of humanity. That's not trying to say we are better or worse than these. It's just we're different. We have these disorders, and we have to go through the processes that most people fear. And this is when I realized that, this was the moment when I asked myself, wait, I have to go through that. Something, somebody, some entity, or some genes, or whatever, have forced me to go through that. Is that good or is that bad? Because when I look at it, the results I got from it are actually very positive. I am one of the not so large number of people in the world who has learned how to correctly examine his own thoughts. I have learned, because I've explored it for, I don't know, more than 10 years, 12 or 13 years, I've explored my psyche. I know not all of them, but a lot of the small mechanisms, all these little cogs, if you want to, or speaking metaphorically, that mesh together and form what is effectively my existence, my perception of my existence. And philosophically speaking, these two can end up being the same, but that's a different topic. I have firsthand experienced how existence and the perception of existence works in my brain. I have learned to deal with the anxiety that comes from reflecting upon, challenging, or sometimes dropping a belief. I have learned that. I was forced to go through it, and it wasn't a nice process. God knows it wasn't, but I've learned it. And this has turned out to be something very, very valuable. One of the other video responses, I haven't watched them all, but there was this young blonde guy who said that one of the results of your present state is that you are able to empathize with people who have gone through the same. Now, while that is, if you look at it as an isolated case, that is something positive. But it doesn't make sense in the way that in order for that to be positive, you need other people who are harmed. So how does them being harmed fit with Jeremiah 29:11? I mean it doesn't. So that's just the first step. But think of where you are right now, what you're doing. Effectively, you are part, or you are at the forefront of exploring the human consciousness. You don't do it from a scientific point of view. You're not like in a lab and conducting all kinds of experiments and stuff. No, you're like a auto-psychonaut. You explore your own psyche, and through that you not only learn to empathize because of your experience, but you learn how thought itself works, how emotions arise from thought, how thought influences emotions, and what things can go wrong there. And not only that, you're not only learning that, you're not only studying psychology, because a lot of well, we have a lot of psychologists out there, so they have learned that as well. But you have also experienced it, which means that whenever you talk about it, you are an authentic person. Doesn't mean that scientists are inauthentic, but if a psychologist goes to someone and tells, I know what you're feeling, bullcrap, he isn't. But if you go to someone and tell them, I know what you're feeling, then you're authentic. That's not bullshit. That's the truth. And this is just the first step. Because once you are able to deal with the major problems that your experiences have caused, you end up with knowledge. And upon that knowledge you can build. You can go even deeper into your psyche. Once you've learned how to get certain parts out of it, right at the moment, I think you want to learn how to get the disease out of you, or the disorder, or whatever you call it, out of you. Once you've learned that, you find that you can apply the techniques that you've learned to other things. And once you practice that, you find out that you can change different things, different beliefs that have nothing to do with your disorder, that perhaps aren't even detrimental or disadvantageous, but you can change them for the fun of it. I mean, why not? And we always have one or two things up there, even normal people have them, that just don't work right. But you, through your process, through your, how do you call it, therapy, have learned how to change them, how to interchange them, how to perhaps connect them in new ways. These are skills that are extremely rare and extremely valuable. Because once you've mastered that, in my case, I think I've not fully mastered it, but I'm quite good at it right now. It took 10 to 12 years, like I said. Once you've gone through that, you can talk to other people about that. You, at that point, will have a very profound, authentic, and most likely correct understanding of consciousness. And this is something that is almost invaluable in our world. Why? Because few people take the time to actually develop that kind of understanding. Why? Because they're not forced to. But you and I were. You and I are. I mean, I'm not healed. I'm not fully cured. I'm still bipolar. I'm on medication, and I will be for the rest of my life. I still suffer from extreme loss of self-esteem at times. I still suffer from, well, I always say my father is socially awkward and my mother is a penguin, if you know something about memes. So I still have my problems, but I've learned from them. And I've learned these skills and this. I've learned the ability, or I've gotten the ability, or learned the skill to put this thing called consciousness or existence into very easy words. And whoever is willing to listen has always ended up telling me, is that really that? I mean, nobody else has ever explained that to me. How do you know that? How did you learn that? And I said, well, do you really want to know? Let's say for the moment that, I don't know, you're 20 or something, 20 I think. Let's say for the moment that in 11 years, once you are as old as I am now, end up where I have ended up. With all these knowledges, with all these skills, with all these abilities to change yourself, to adapt to things, to understand the day-to-day, absolutely normal thought processes, emotional processes, perspective, ways of being, whatever you want to call it, that other people don't understand. Would you truly think that you would, in that state, be without hope for the future? Would you be without prosperity? I can tell you, if you end up where I am right now, you will be prosperous. Oh boy, will you be prosperous. You will be very creative. You will have a very modular, dynamic worldview. In other words, you will be extremely open-minded. In fact, you will have fully understood and experienced what open-mindedness is, what it means, and how it works here in the brain. It's not just that you'll say, well, I try to be open-minded, like most people say who haven't really understood it, which is not a criticism, but that's mostly the case. You will truly be open-minded. You will be the, well, personification of open-mindedness. Would you think that this is not a very prosperous and very hopeful existence? If you were in that state, wouldn't you look to the future and say, well, no matter how shitty I feel sometimes, I have a rather bright future ahead of me? Well, that's a question now only you can answer. I can tell you from my perspective, I'm an extremely hopeful individual. I'm prosperous and I'm getting better and better, although I'm taking baby steps, but I'm getting more and more prosperous. And when I look to my future, although I know I will have to experience rapid mood swings, sometimes from one minute to the next for a whole day, and I know I will go through pain and suffering and harm again, but I also know that I will be able to deal with them because I've learned it. And this is something that very few people can say about themselves. And this is something that is valuable, whether you are able to empathize with other people who have harmed or not. And this is something that can be taught and that you can let shine when you're around people. This is something valuable. And if you end up there, would you think that this, how do you call that, state of being or stage of existence fits with Jeremiah 29:11? I think it would. I think this would fit with Jeremiah 29:11. So, effectively, I can't give you, or, well, you don't have an answer for that question yet. It may take time, if you truly want to answer it from using the terminology or the worldview of the Christian paradigm, because I don't want that. I just adopted it for the sheer fun of it. But all what you're going through can be explained with Jeremiah 29:11 staying intact. It can be, if you want to. If you want to view this from the Christian perspective. I just did it for the fun of it, and I found that question challenging. Speaking as an atheist, however, well, I can only say I have quite a good idea of what you're going through and what you have ahead of you. And I definitely wish you all the best. I think you're doing a great job up until now. If I had been, or when I was 20, and my psychologist would have told me, come on, go on the internet, make a video about that, talk about your condition or your disorder, I would have been like, are you insane? I'm not gonna do this. So no matter how low your self-esteem may be at times, you got balls, man. You really got balls. You're a very brave individual, and you come across as extremely authentic, extremely warm-hearted, and very likable. That alone, if the molestation, all the bad stuff has gone through, has led you to this position, has led you to develop this kind of authenticity, and all the stuff you do has made you the one you are, if that truly is the case, then from my perspective I can say, well, you've become a very, very good person. You've already managed to get a few very, very good things out of all this harm and all this pain and all this hatred. And my deepest respects for that. I mean, you did a frigging great job. I hope, I wish more people would do that. So, I hope this is a more or less satisfying answer from one person with a disorder to the next, or speaking in the Christian paradigm, from brother to brother. I hope that is okay, and that, well, yeah, I hope that is a satisfying answer. Thanks for watching, best of luck, and I'm quite sure you'll make it. You're gonna get through this. I'm sure of it. See ya.